Hey, good afternoon. Will Carroll with Deloitte Consulting, GPS, and I am joined this afternoon by Yemi Oshinaye, TSA CIO. Yemi, welcome. Super excited to be here talking about what's happening here at CES. We're going to get a little bit into some digital transformation, a little bit about what's happening in terms of cyber and AI at TSA. But before we even do that, let's just get a little bit on your background. I just want to know a little bit about what brought you into this position as the TSA CIO.
So, Will, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Yemi Oshinaye, as you said, CIO TSA. My background is started as a developer. I did a lot of support. Kind of grew up in technology and in DHS. Actually, DHS has been the place that I've been for most of my life. Spent a lot of it in the immigration space, and I just had a passion for the mission. And TSA 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago today, right?
Wow, hey, yeah, 2022, right?
Yeah, 22. Yeah. I had an opportunity to go somewhere where the technology was vast. The mission hit a lot of people. I mean, 3.2 million people a day, every day. And that's just transportation, passengers. We also have the sector SRMA. We actually have to go and make sure doing inspections that the sector is safe, not only physically, but in cyber. That's a new area for us. So when I had the opportunity to be in such a vast place with a large mission, I said, why not? And so here I am.
Wow. And so when we hear mission of the TSA, I know most people jump right to airport security. That's where they usually are. But as you were saying, it's much broader. So outside of checkpoints at the airports, where else is TSA operating? What are some of the big areas?
Right. So it's broader aviation security. So you look at how the airlines and how the airports are managing security in themselves. Who has ingress, egress? What kind of cyber plans do you have? What kind of cyber responses do you have if you were to get impacted by cyber? Also, we have rail and pipeline. And so it's a vast interconnected area. We also look in some ways at cargo. So this is really making sure people and goods can travel safely throughout the country.
Wow. So 3 years, and in those 3 years, what have you started to, I mean, that's for CIO, that's a pretty good tenure.
Yeah.
You know, CIO sometimes be kind of a short tenure type of job. It's a tough job. So what have you learned? Like, what has changed since you started in this position?
Yeah, I'll tell you, always go into a place looking at the mission. So the first thing I did is I went out to talk to folks. I went to the airports, I went to our folks that do inspections and compliance, and kind of asked, what are the things that, are your pain points? Where can we look at it? And everyone said the front line, making sure that we can work the front line and helping us travel. So we even have an international arm that does work with airports outside of the country so that we can trust inspection, compliance, and screening coming across from an international perspective. So one of the things we did first was see, how can we enhance mobility? How can we make mobility more secure? How can we make mobility more effective? And working on applications that support the TSO. So that's been a major focus. How do we get quicker at getting software out into production? Working on being able to say, if you have an idea, we can take that idea, push it forward, and deploy it in short forms. We've gotten that down at least 30%. So we're getting things out of the door faster and making them, at the same time, making them more secure. One of the things we're most proud of is what we call citizen development. We've enabling feds to build applications and then deploy them. Citizen development is one of the things that we are most proud of. We have our application that helps you choose rooms and locations in the building. That was built by a Fed. He knew exactly what he wanted to do, and we said, here are the tools. Built it himself, and we have at least 20,000 people that use it today. And so we're enabling not only folks at headquarters, but across the TSA to be able to do applications like that. So citizen development is very proud of. So those things we've kind of supercharged since I've gotten here.
Keep rolling stuff out.
Keep rolling stuff out.
So you've been here at CES all week. Absolutely amazing. I had the opportunity yesterday to walk around. You can't even take it all in a day. Just on a personal level, what's jumping out to you about CES this year, the types of innovations, what people are showing? What's standing out so far?
Yeah, so health tech is big. So I even personally walked around, looked at the rings that you use to tell them some of your biostats, looking at how you can take care of your holistic health. They even have adapters where you can take saliva swabs and in a matter of minutes, see on your phone what kind of your health status is. I think more in our arena, if you look at AI, here I saw people looking at AI from an infrastructure, support perspective, what is our supply chain like?
Yeah.
What is the support processing like? What are the chips like? NVIDIA came out with a lot of a lot of good news here. So how does that affect us and allow us to do more? So that I thought was most interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of this is getting harder to touch and feel over the last couple of years. For me, it used to be those really cool new things you might want for home, be able to, and now it's a little bit more reading. You're kind of going reading because a lot of this stuff is software, a lot of this stuff is embedded, but obviously very important. And at the TSA, I've got to imagine you've got software, you've got physical devices, you've got data networks, kind of everything. When you think about some of the biggest opportunities at the TSA, does it fall into one of those, or is it kind of across the board?
It's across the board, because if you're thinking about it, we have such rich data about travel, about security, and about how we take those things and protect them. We also have a lot of rich data about what we can do in predicting. So how do we manage the wait times across security? How do we see what is the most prevalent item when we're looking at screening prohibited items? And how do we bring that together to not only protect the passenger, but to give them the best experience? Because at the same time, we are making sure that you can travel places safely, but we want to make sure you enjoy doing it at the same time. We don't want it to be stressful in the environment, because that also impacts security of the environment. So.
Yeah, especially this time of year, the weather makes it stressful enough. So just getting in and out of the security checkpoints, usually the least stressful part of my day travel.
I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely. And so as you start thinking about AI, I know one of the things that I struggle with when I think about AI is, there's both the opportunity and then there's the threat.
Yeah.
AI can be an incredible tool, working on mission, working on changing the way you do things, but AI is also available to the other side, to the people who are coming after, the people you're protecting against. And so how do you think about that? Do you organize that differently within the TSA? Or are the people thinking more about the threat side of AI versus the how do you use it to make your mission better? Or is there got to kind of be a mix of both talking to each other?
Yeah, unlike most agencies, so we have kind of a dual responsibility. I mentioned before the SRMA, the Sector Risk Management Authority. So one of the things we look at is not just our systems, but what are the systems in the sector doing? How safe are they? And our first move towards is saying education. You have to understand, what the threat is, how to use the technology, and make sure it's safe for all. Because the first area is if someone makes a mistake and does something that impacts everyone using AI. Because AI right now, it can be used to make multiple permutations of, let's say you're trying to get a password, and you can quickly get random passwords to break a code. That's someone being nefarious. But if you're making a mistake, we want to make sure we can reduce the amount of mistakes, or understand what happens if there's a ransomware, or if you have a social engineering attack. So when we look at it that way, it's increasing education, but at the same time is how do we get more secure? What are the best tools, and how do you build your environment, your enterprise environment, so you're less susceptible to some of those attacks? So it is pretty broad. What we do is we work with our inspection and compliance folks, we work with our partners, we work with our vendors, and we try to take scenario looks at everything, and then we build technology around to defend ourselves from that.
As well. And you've got a lot of friendlies too you've got to connect with, right? I got to imagine there's a lot of data flowing between airlines, airports, and then when you get into rail and others. So are you seeing some of those who are maybe in the commercial or other areas, are they moving faster, slower? Are you seeing something different in the way they're adapting AI versus the way you all are at the TSA?
I think, it's a lot of the same. So AI's been around for a while. So if you just talk about machine learning and using algorithms for different things, I think we've gotten that down pat, and we're moving pretty much at the same speed. When it comes to like Gen AI and where we use it and when it's done, I mean, we can recreate our faces in video right now, and someone can call you on a video chat and you wouldn't know if it's me or not. And so when it comes to protecting ourselves from something like that, the question is, where is that most nefarious and where does that impact us more? I think some vendors work better than others. So the question is, where is that, lack of a better phrase, weak link? And how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect ourselves from third party? We've had events where if someone else's tech fails, then we fail too.
Right, yeah.
And what are the things we do to be partners and come back together? And what do we so that we're back up and operating? And what are the things we do to prevent that?
Yeah.
And so I think when it comes to those, it doesn't really matter who's faster or slower.
Right.
It matters, what's that shared equity
Yeah.
and how we're protecting that.
Yeah, and relationship and trust. I mean, you've got to have strong relationships with them.
Absolutely.
Understanding where things come and go.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of trust is one of the big questions I had, right? I know walking around, you mentioned digital health. I've got one of my digital health trackers on. Citizens these days, people are used to letting this know everything. What I eat, what I sleep, where I go. But when it comes to interacting with government, a lot of people are a little bit more wary about how much information they want the government to have, the TSA. How do you look at that? How does the TSA look at how much data? More data is probably better, probably make the experience easier, but I imagine there's some pushback too.
Well, for TSA specifically,
Yeah.
because we're doing transportation security, we're securing everyone.
Right.
So knowing what an individual, based on your individual private information, isn't as important to us as knowing patterns, as knowing how the environment, and knowing what's safe. So, one of the things we build trust with our passengers and the customer community is knowing that we're protecting your privacy.
Yeah.
We don't store that data, but we use the data real time to make sure you are who you say you are. And then once you're on your way, you're on your way.
You're done.
No, exactly.
That's
So
it. Yeah.
we build that trust. We've actually seen in our touchless identity product that people love it because it's fast. I mean, it's 3 seconds or less. You're on your way, to the gate. And they trust in the fact that we say we're going to not take that data and store it. We're using that data for identity validation.
Yeah.
And that's really where we start to build trust as people see it, as they see the results and the benefit of what they get.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that data is really transient. It's kind of at that moment. You want to know who they are, but you don't need to know after that where they're going, where they went. It's just that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're just making sure that process and that person is safe. So you have in that transportation, what we call the sterile environment, that there are only people there that are there because they need to be, and then where everyone else is safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as you look across, there's got to be a ton of hardware. Think about rail, ports, airports, although constantly seeing new hard products in airports from a security perspective, but that's a tremendous amount of devices that, I imagine have been upgraded fairly recently, but in some cases are probably aging out and don't have the same capabilities for quick updates, for being networked. Is that something that you struggle with, or is that something that you're kind of quickly getting upgraded so things can be taking those upgrades quickly?
I think from the ecosystem, I think it's something that there are some struggles in there. I would say specific for TSA, we take a great pride in doing a lot of refresh really quickly. Even if it isn't the latest and greatest, it's in the realm of being supported. And then we have protections around it. So we have something that's not new this year. We know we're protected through the network. We're monitoring, scanning and making updates. When you look at like an airport environment or an aviation environment, you never know. Because you have different vendors. You have the vendors for the store, you have the vendors for the airlines, you also have the vendors that are third-party vendors. There are routers everywhere, phones everywhere.
Right.
So the key is making sure that folks have access to what they need and not more than that. And if you think there's someone in an environment that shouldn't be there, make sure it's segmented so you can keep them out on one or the other. And again, from the SRMA duties that we have, the responsibility, we're making sure our main vendors check their third party and are watching that. Segment, and that goes back to zero trust, making sure that we understand that folks just can't get anywhere on your network.
Yeah, that is super cool. And so, when I think about what is next, AI, absolutely fascinating. More AI and devices coming online, absolutely fascinating. Is there anything that people you think aren't thinking about? Are there things that jump ahead of where our day-to-day experience is today that you're starting to see out on the horizon, AI and some of the capabilities will bring us to?
I think you can extend a little beyond transportation security and look at some of the benefits. So we can get information to people faster and more personalized, quicker. So if you're on the way to an airport and you want to know what the wait times are at a certain area of the airport, you also want to know if you can get coffee really quick on your way to the checkpoint and then to see if there's traffic, you can do that. But the question is, how do we personalize that for you through a chatbot? And if you get the answer back, does that answer persist? So when you get there, you can say, has anything changed?
Yeah.
You have having simple conversations. I actually saw a booth here that said, that does really good voice search, whether there's a lot of noise or a little noise. If you bring all that together, you have like a personalized experience from your doorstep all the way to the gate.
Wow.
And so how do we partner with folks to make that happen? And that's just something I made up sitting here. So
yeah, no, that's pretty good. And I think
who knows?
That's the type of thing, where, I get excited about. It's especially as we're walking around at CES. So many of the things are kind of point to point, right? They're point solutions, but what it takes, people like yourself thinking about, well, how do we connect these? How do we connect these into our mission? How do we connect these things into something that will change that experience?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Yemi, this has been amazing. I've loved this time has flown by. It's been fascinating. I have to say, during the break, telling my kids I was going to have this opportunity to talk to you was the highlight. Everyone was super excited.
I appreciate
that. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week at CES.
Will do.
Thank you all for watching this afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Had a great time. Thank you.
All
right, appreciate it.
You.